Listen closely. The world is full of voices, loud, restless, colliding. Everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to matter. But few, very few, are willing to listen. And yet, the secret to influence, the quiet power that bends the course of history, belongs not to those who shout the loudest, but to those who hear what others cannot say out loud. Influence begins not with words, but with silence. Not with commanding, but with understanding. Not with forcing, but with feeling. Think about Abraham Lincoln in the White House during the Civil War. His cabinet often disagreed with him, sometimes even ridiculed him behind closed doors. Yet Lincoln had a gift: he would sit, lean back in his chair, and listen. Not with the impatience of a man waiting to speak, but with the patience of a man who knew the cost of speaking too soon. He absorbed their fears, their doubts, their anger, and in that listening he found the truth beneath the noise. His strength was not in overpowering others with his voice, but in making others feel that their voices mattered. And so, men who would have opposed him came to follow him. Not because he demanded it, but because he understood them. Listening is not passive. It is one of the most active forces in human connection. To listen deeply is to step inside another person's world, to see through their eyes, to feel through their heart. When Thomas Edison was building his inventions, he listened not only to people but to the world itself. He listened to the hum of machines, the silence of a darkroom, the whisper of possibility. His genius was not in forcing ideas, but in hearing what the universe was already whispering. And yet, most of us go through life half-deaf. Not because our ears fail us, but because our ego does. We rush to reply, we hurry to prove, we crave to be right. But when your desire to be interesting is greater than your desire to be interested, you lose the power to influence. Influence doesn't belong to the one who speaks first. It belongs to the one who listens last. Look around you. The leaders who shaped nations, the visionaries who moved industries, the mentors who transformed lives, they all shared one trait: they made others feel heard. Henry Ford once said, "If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view, and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." That is not a quote about cars. That is a quote about humanity. Ford listened, not only to engineers and financiers, but to ordinary workers who wanted a better wage, a shorter workday, and dignity in their labor. He listened, and in listening, he built not only an industry, but a movement. To listen deeper is to unlock hidden doors in people's souls. It is to touch the part of them that longs to be understood. And when you touch that place, your influence is no longer forced. It flows. But listening, true listening, is rare. Most only hear words. Few hear the pauses between them. Fewer still hear the emotions buried beneath the words. That is where influence lies. Not in the noise, but in the silence underneath. When Franklin D. Roosevelt spoke to the nation through his fireside chats, he wasn't shouting. He wasn't lecturing. He spoke as if he were in the living room of every family. Why? Because before he ever gave those words, he had listened. He had studied the fears of farmers, the worries of workers, the doubts of mothers tucking their children into bed during a depression. He carried their voices inside him. So when he spoke, he wasn't speaking at them. He was speaking for them. That is the art of leadership. Not to impose your vision, but to absorb the vision of others and merge it with your own. Listening is the bridge. Without it, you command only obedience. With it, you awaken loyalty. Think of it this way: when a seed is planted, it doesn't scream to grow. It listens. It listens to the soil. It listens to the rain. It listens to the sun. In silence, in patience, in surrender, it finds its strength. And from that listening, it rises. That is how human influence works. Not by pushing, but by perceiving. Not by forcing, but by flowing. Most people will tell you what they need, but not with their mouths. They will tell you with their eyes. With their silence. With the way their shoulders sink when they are weary. With the way their voice cracks when they are hiding pain. To listen deeper is to catch what the untrained ear misses. Great teachers do this. Great parents do this. Great leaders do this. Dale Carnegie wrote it simply: "Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise." But how can you give genuine praise if you have not listened deeply enough to know what a person values, what they fear, what they hope for? Praise without listening is flattery. Praise after listening is transformation. Napoleon Hill once spent hours with Andrew Carnegie, absorbing his every word. But more importantly, he absorbed his silences. Hill noticed the hesitation, the quiet conviction, the pauses heavy with meaning. That deep listening became the foundation of Think and Grow Rich, a book that would change millions of lives. Without listening, Hill would have written pages of shallow advice. With listening, he captured timeless truth. The world will always have speakers. It will always have those who demand attention. But the world hungers, desperately, for listeners. The man or woman who listens deeply stands apart. In a crowd that screams, they become the calm. In a storm of voices, they become the anchor. And people will gather around them, not because they shout the loudest, but because they hear the deepest. Influence begins here. Not in speaking. Not in shouting. In listening. In silence. In presence. Listening is more than a skill. It is an act of respect. It is a declaration to another human being that says, "You matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters." And in a world starved for validation, that simple act is revolutionary. Think of the last time someone truly listened to you, not nodding politely, not waiting for their turn to speak, but listening with their whole being. Didn't it feel rare? Didn't it feel like sunlight breaking through clouds? That feeling is the very soil in which influence grows. Because when people feel heard, they begin to trust. And trust is the currency of every relationship, whether in business, in family, or in friendship. Most leaders fail not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack ears. They walk into rooms with speeches ready, but no space for answers. They fill silence with declarations but leave no room for discovery. The greatest truths do not come from what you already know. They come from what you are humble enough to hear. Abraham Lincoln, often remembered for his soaring words, was in truth a master listener. He would sit silently, letting others pour out their grievances, their doubts, their suggestions. Many mistook his silence for indecision. They were wrong. That silence was gathering power. He was weaving together the hearts of men into a fabric strong enough to endure civil war. His leadership was not only in what he said, but in what he absorbed before he spoke. Listening is not passive. It is active, deliberate, intentional. It demands presence. It demands that you set aside your hunger to be right, to be impressive, to be seen. Real listening is not about waiting, it is about seeking. Seeking the truth beneath the words, the humanity behind the mask. And when you do this, something extraordinary happens. People open. Walls crumble. Defenses fall. They feel safe, and in that safety, they reveal their truest selves. Influence is never about control, it is about connection. And connection begins the moment you care enough to hear. Imagine a world where leaders listen more than they spoke. Imagine homes where parents listen to the dreams of their children before dictating their futures. Imagine workplaces where managers listened not just to results, but to the frustrations, the passions, the silent cries of their teams. Such a world would not need as many commands, because listening creates alignment. When people are heard, they willingly walk the path with you. The irony is this: to be unforgettable in people's minds, you don't have to talk endlessly. You only have to listen endlessly. They may not remember your exact words, but they will never forget the feeling of being heard by you. So let the others shout. Let the world chase attention with noise. You, instead, build influence with silence. Let your power be in the pauses, your strength in the spaces between words. For it is in those quiet places that trust is born, loyalty is nurtured, and legacies are written. Listening is the quiet revolution. It does not demand applause. It does not require spotlight or recognition. And yet, it changes the course of lives. One person who feels truly heard can transform a room, a company, even a nation. One person who listens with intention can turn despair into hope, doubt into courage, and hesitation into action. Consider the mentor who doesn't dictate a path, but listens to the young mind brimming with uncertainty and curiosity. The guidance that follows is not generic advice, it is tailored, alive, and deeply resonant. That is the power of listening. It allows you to meet people where they are, to honor their journey, and to help them grow on their own terms. And here lies the paradox: the less you speak, the more influence you earn. The less you interrupt, the more respect you command. The less you assert your own story, the more people reveal theirs, and in revealing, they entrust you with their trust. Influence, real influence, is never imposed. It is invited. It is cultivated. And it is always born in the fertile soil of attention. Listening also teaches patience, the kind of patience that cannot be rushed, that cannot be faked, that demands presence. The impatient speaker seeks results immediately. The listener knows that depth cannot be hurried. Relationships, ideas, innovations, even revolutions, they all require time to breathe, to be understood, to take root. Listening grants that time. Listening creates that space. Listening turns potential into reality. Great leaders understand this instinctively. They sense that beneath every complaint lies a desire, beneath every fear lies a hope, beneath every silence lies a story waiting to be heard. They do not fill that silence with their own noise. They honor it. They lean into it. And when they do, the world leans back. People begin to align, to follow, to trust, not because of the authority granted to them, but because of the care they have shown. Listening is not limited to words. It is the awareness of posture, of tone, of hesitation, of glance, of breath. The smallest cues carry immense weight. The faintest tremor in a voice may reveal anxiety, the softest sigh may carry longing. And those who notice, who pay attention, who remember, wield influence far beyond what words alone could achieve. The truth is simple: in a universe filled with voices clamoring for attention, the one who truly listens becomes rare, becomes precious, becomes indispensable. People will gravitate toward them. They will seek them out. They will confide in them. They will trust them with what matters most. And through that trust, influence grows, not through coercion, not through force, not through volume, but through connection, through empathy, through silent understanding. So do not underestimate the power of your ears. Do not undervalue the quiet authority of presence. Let the world speak. Let it shout. Let it clamor. You, instead, choose to listen. And in that listening, you become more than a voice, you become a force. You become the calm in the storm, the anchor in chaos, the unseen architect of loyalty, respect, and lasting influence. Because influence does not live in the words we speak. It lives in the spaces between them. It lives in the silence we honor. It lives in the hearts that feel heard. Listening is not merely an act, it is a discipline. It requires training the mind to resist distraction, to resist the temptation to respond before the other has finished speaking. It demands humility, the willingness to admit your understanding is incomplete, that someone else's insight may reveal a truth you have never seen. It is a practice of patience and presence, and like any skill worth mastering, it must be exercised consistently. The world thrives on interruption, on filling silence with noise. Social media, advertising, conversations, they all grab attention, demand reaction, drown out subtlety. Yet influence never resides in volume. It resides in attentiveness, in stillness, in the willingness to be fully present, to absorb without judgment, and to respond from understanding rather than assumption. History remembers those who listened. Eleanor Roosevelt, a figure of empathy and diplomacy, said that great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. The exceptional minds, she noted, listen first, observe carefully, and respond wisely. They gather fragments of human experience, joy, sorrow, fear, hope, and weave them into solutions that resonate because they honor life's complexity, not because they impose simplified answers. Listening also fosters courage, the courage to confront uncomfortable truths, to hold space for perspectives different from your own, to resist the urge to dominate a conversation or win an argument. True leaders know power is not proven by speaking over others, but by creating space where voices rise freely, ideas emerge authentically, and trust flourishes.